Welcome to the Nested Healing Podcast. Today's topic is understanding the impact of trauma from a self-care perspective. My name is Desiree, and I am the intern at NI2C. I'm also a student at Cal State Fullerton, and my major is psychology. Manji?
Yeah, I'll go. Hello, my name is Manji Hoy. I am a recent graduate of Cal Poly Pomona. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science, and I come into this meeting with a background primarily just as student, recent graduate. I've done martial arts all my life, so that type of things. And also, I am a client of NI2C. Just on my path to healing, I guess.
I'm Brian Schwartz. I'm a facilitator, coach, mediator, consultant. I run my own business called BSCC, and I'm a graduate of New Ventures West coaching school. And for undergraduate, I went to Pomona College, so not far from Cal Poly Pomona. And then Lesley University, I studied intercultural relations in Cambridge, Mass. For grad school.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Amos. I am a leadership and life coach. I'm a facilitator, and I'm also a consultant, primarily in human resources, working with people. I am a graduate of New Ventures West as well. I am also a Gallup certified strengths coach and a certified yoga teacher. And I was a certified body worker, did massage therapy for a couple of years as well. And I've worked in nonprofits for most of my professional career. And I am very excited to be joining this conversation, and also to be joining NI2C more meaningfully next year, when I will start working with the organization and hopefully become a facilitator in the future. So I'm working towards that. And yeah, I think, I'm a graduate from UC Santa Cruz, so banana slug.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys being here and having this discussion. I'll start it off with this question. How can self-care help with coping with trauma?
I guess I'll give my idea first. I would say self-care, in my opinion, helps cope with trauma in the sense that self-care, to me at least, is like the facilitator of coping with trauma. Like self-care helps us get into a comfortable state, gets us, or not too comfortable, but it helps us feel safe. It helps us feel not burdened, not scared. It helps us actually have a space to work on our trauma, to actually look in and deal with those things that we've carried from the past. I think if you, especially if you're constantly in a state of distress and just constantly worrying about other things, constantly not looking after yourself, constantly ignoring your own body's signs to give yourself some rest, give yourself some self-care, give yourself some space. I think at that point there's no real room to deal with your traumas. There's no room to actually cope with it. There's no room to slowly exercise those knots out. Just relax. There's no room to really work on yourself at that point.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I was thinking about it from the perspective of self-care being how we tend to our nervous system. And only by tending to our nervous system can we successfully and reliably meet life's needs. And so if we are abandoning our physical needs in particular, I think, which a lot of us tend to do because we think of ourselves as these like we just need to have this body here to move our brain around so our brain can do all the things. But really, we are creatures of body, creatures of heart, and creatures of mind. And yeah, I was just thinking about how, like, I know people, I think, take better care of their cars than they do of their bodies, like we just can be like so detached from the needs of ourselves as humans. Like, human beings have these needs, and if we aren't taking care of them and taking care of ourselves and our bodies, then we're not, um yeah, we're not going to be able to address anything, whether it's trauma or just the basic kind of needs of our lives.
Yeah, I was thinking about, you made me think about how well I take care of my car. And luckily, I don't take very good care of my car.
Me
So
neither.
maybe that means I take care of my body better than my car. I think it probably does. But yeah, I mean, I do, I lead some trainings, and one of those we talk a lot about body language and how they say that body language is at least 80% of the communication that we do, supposedly.
Mm.
Which is so strange, right? Because we use language and words, and that comes from our brain that we're like processing it. Um, and I think, well, I won't speak for everyone, but for myself, a lot of times I feel like I get paid for my mind, like the
Mm.
work that I do, it's really prioritized. And so then my body, I'm like, oh, I'll get to that. You know, I go to Zumba once a week, which is fun, and I do this class
Mm.
called Piloxing, which is Pilates, boxing, and dance that my wife teaches. Highly
Wow.
recommend it. Yeah. But there's other things I want to be doing. Like, there's a story I tell myself that if I did yoga every day, like everything would be better. But
Mm.
that doesn't make me do yoga every day. So that I think
Mm.
the way that self-care is like an offering. When you first said it, Desiree, I was like, well, how doesn't self-care help? Like, to me, self-care is the
Mm.
whole deal. Sometimes there could be some other care in there, like Anne was talking about, doing body work and other things in the past. And the more of that, you know, I do, the better. But my mind still wants to take me in a different direction. And I think with a lot of my clients, that's the case too. But again, I feel like what I have to offer them are my, keen insights, not
Mm.
like my flexibility or something.
Mm. I think that's so interesting that you see it that way, Brian, because for me, I felt that integral coaching was like so perfect for me because it brought in all of this body stuff that I'd been doing that was disconnected from my work, and
Mm.
it allowed me to bring that to my work. Um, so like, for example, I facilitated a retreat yesterday for a small team from SF MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art here in San Francisco,
Cool.
which was super cool. They were a great team. And at one point we paired up, and it was an uneven numbers. I had to pair with somebody, and we were talking about strengths and sort of, like the things that we bring. And I thought, like, I think a big part of what I'm bringing today is love. And I've never said that in a business context before, but I was only paired with one person. So I thought, I thought it was okay. Right. But
Yeah.
like I was bringing my heart to this. So of course, like I have training and I have all, I had all these ideas and I did all that work, but like to be in that space with 9 amazing human beings and bring love to help them, like, I mean, back to like the self-care thing, help them regulate their nervous systems, right? Because, they hadn't worked together in the way that we were working. And I think that a combination of like my nervous system being regulated and me coming from love and not just from my mind also kind of enabled them to get down into the conversation and into the work in a different way. But I know what you mean. Like there's this perception that like I'm being paid for my ideas, I'm being paid for my brilliance or whatever. But coaching in this integral way and supporting others to be more integrated in their being, to me, is this beautiful opportunity to remind people that they are this body and they are this heart, and how can they bring that especially into business, because I think that's where it's needed so much.
Mm.
Yeah.
Desiree, what's your take on all that we're saying?
Um, yeah, I agree with Anne, in what she's saying. Like her, it's almost like when you're telling somebody or giving somebody advice, you kind of start taking it in for yourself and start believing it for you. So she says it helps her. Um, and I feel the same way when I give people like advice or they're giving me advice. Like it's kind of healing in a way. Like it heals me to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I think I might have to make a connection. It's like, especially what you said, Brian, with like the concept of like, being paid for your mind and that almost leading to the sort of ignoring of the body. I feel like I definitely understand that in the sense that like, I am, pursuing myself and I'm pursuing interest in like the tech world and whatnot. And I almost always think about like, oh, I'm most likely gonna get a tech-based job. I have to really, you know, they really are literally paying me for my mind and, all that stuff is hyper important. I do see myself training even more on that. And sometimes to the point where I do ignore my body. But I think one thing that definitely helps for me is that so much of the things I love to do outside of work, obviously, outside of, anything like that, comes in the form of physical things. Like once again, I love martial arts of all kind. I love it in every way. I love the aspects of, just be able to hit something when I'm frustrated. I love the
Mm-hmm.
aspects of the deep levels of meditation I can get to while physically moving, while it's just me, it's only me in the room. I'm the only thing I'm focused on. I'm focused on the way my body's moving through the space. I'm focused on the way my, leg feels when I do this. I'm focused on every last itty bitty bit. I love the aspects of it making me feel safer, knowing that worst comes to worst, if someone were to actively try to bring harm on me, I can take care of myself. I can defend myself. Like, I think what you're saying is definitely like so accurate of like, yeah, on a work level, because I'm being paid for my mind, I really do prioritize my mind. But I think it definitely helps for like, since my self-care choice is very physical, it definitely helps bring me back into, definitely taking care of myself a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
especially like I really enjoy it.
And I mean, I would argue like those things are not like it's not separable. Like they're not like you're not being paid for your mind, you're being paid for you. And part of what you are is a person who's very embodied and has this relationship to your physical self, and you have a presence and you have a grounding and you have a flexibility and you have a strength and you have a confidence, all of which come from all of this work that you've done in your body. And if you were to like, I mean, like The Simpsons or something where you like, like these heads in jars or whatever. If you were just the head in a jar, I mean, what would you even be, right? Because you wouldn't be bringing all of that physicality. and and even if you think about like, I don't know if you've got a job or if you're looking for jobs, but like if you're competing for a job with somebody who doesn't have any of that, but has the same skill, like they're not going to have the same endurance professionally as you do. They're not going to have the same resilience as you do. They're not going to be able to like, work as long or as well or as efficiently or whatever. So, I mean, this is something that has been like such a hard time coming for me, is especially like I think as a woman and as a mom, like always feeling like, oh, well, like I'm going to get to my well-being after I take care of my kids. And I reached like a huge burnout a couple of years ago and ended up having to quit my job, and I mean just all of this stuff. And it was because I was always putting other people's needs first. And that led to a level of like embodied trauma for me of just shutting down. And I think I'm finally starting to like claim for myself that my number one priority is my health and well-being. And my second priority is my family's health and well-being. But like, if I, again, if I, like put your mask on, oxygen mask on first or whatever,
Yeah, I thought of that.
you
Thought of
really
that.
have, like, it really is true. And if I wasn't doing that effectively enough. And then I reached a point where like I couldn't help my kids anymore and keep a job. It was like one or the other. So I don't know. Yeah, I think I was a bit rambling, but it's like I just feel I feel that it's so important to be integrated and to acknowledge and appreciate the ways that we are, and then to be aware of the ways that we aren't, so that we can bring more of that into whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's a tech job or a coaching job or being a student or whatever.
Actually, you touched on it a little bit, but one of my questions was, what keeps you from taking care of yourself?
Hmm. Well, I could rant on that one. Because one of the things I was kind of prepping for that question, and one of the things I actually wrote down was capitalism, like like this need to make money, right? And this need to, like, especially, I mean, for those of us who don't necessarily consider ourselves like neurotypical, or like who are aware of like neurodivergence, like feeling out of sync with the way the world um is set up and designed. And so I think like capitalism as a structure makes it really hard to prioritize taking care of our well-being first, because it's just not about that. Um, and then I think also for me, like personally, like, financial challenges, scarcity, fear, like that has made it really hard for me, having too many priorities and just not like, and thinking that they were all number one, like I said, like, right. So if it's like, if they're all number one, then yeah, how do I even make a choice? But if I say like my health and well-being is first, then I can put boundaries around things that aren't as important. Um, and then, I mean, I think there's also an important aspect of being aware of like cyclical changes, whether it's within one's own body or in the like moon cycles or in the seasons, like understanding that like, yes, you have less energy in winter because it's darker and like it's normal, and like this shouldn't be the time of year when we have all of our parties and all of our gatherings, but it is. So how do you work within those constraints? But yeah, all living out of alignment with, or pushing past like my energy limits, capitalism, and not putting myself first when I need to. Like those are some of the main things that can get in the way.
I gotta say, I absolutely love the fact that you mentioned capitalism, because the first thing that my mind came up with is like, what is keeping me from taking better care of myself sometimes? And it's definitely like just like small examples. I grew up um very like, the way I describe it is we were poor, but my mom did her best to try to like shelter me from being like super poor, in a sense
Mhm.
that like, we never really had those moments of like the threat of the water company shutting off, our water supply at any moment. But it was definitely like understanding of, okay, there are certain things that would make me happier, but I can't afford them. And I need to prioritize other parts first. Like, would it be nice to, even just from like from a nutritional standpoint, would it be nice to have a fully nutritionally balanced meal with all my beneficial fats, all my nutrients, all my vitamins, gut microbiome health. Like, would it be nice if I could spend the money to have all that? Yes, it would be amazing. But unfortunately, living in a capitalistic society, some of those things are kind of expensive. Some of those things that would make my, general health overall better are kind of expensive. So it leads me to having to make the decision of, okay, do I choose to, buy this one item that will, that will bring me a little bit more happiness while I'm, doing something? Or do I choose to spend that money a little bit more frugally and get something that just barely meets my basic needs rather than something that makes me a little bit happier. And I think that extends all through our society with like there's a lot of times where yes, everyone knows exercise is healthy for you and like getting a gym membership definitely facilitates that. But unfortunately, some of us can't pay for that because some of these gyms are kind of expensive. Would it be nice to be able to take more vacations and holidays? Yes, but unfortunately, we need that extra money from not taking those in order to just keep the lights on. Like just all that stuff. I definitely, I so much agree with the concept of capitalism being such a massive roadblock, and also the analogy of you have to put your own oxygen mask first. I deeply connect with that in the sense that I do, especially before, but not so much now. I definitely found myself constantly prioritizing other people, constantly trying to make other people happy. Even with like, to a certain extent, my very degree, the thing I went to school for, I reflect on it now, and I think sometimes that on some level it was definitely an attempt to make, my mom happy because it was something that she wanted me to do rather than something that I really wanted me to like really want to do. And I just, I constantly throughout life, I've had those cycles of doing things that other people want me to do while silently gritting my teeth in the background and telling myself, okay, I'll get to take the reins next time. I'll get to make myself a little bit happier next time. I'll get myself the treat next time, whatever. And then just never doing it, just constantly holding myself back and like putting on everyone's oxygen mask first while I'm slowly suffocating to death. And then eventually, I definitely noticed like the moment of finally putting on my oxygen mask first, even if it was only for a brief second, so I can just and then go back to putting other people's on. But like just that brief inhale, that brief intake of oxygen definitely felt so great. Yeah, I'm sorry. I definitely think I just rambled a lot.
All good. I think the thing I was going to add that I thought about, like I was saying before about self-care broadening in the last few years, is during the pandemic, I got really into jigsaw puzzles more than I had been. And yeah, they just were operating some other part of my brain and found them soothing. And I could just do them for a while and not worry so much about, potentially getting infected with COVID when it seemed like it was going to kill everyone. And then also like my boss at the time, this was before I was self-employed, and it's just like gave me some space. But I realized like what does get in the way. I'm doing an especially hard puzzle right now. And the last few months I've been busier than I've ever been, I think, in terms of working, which is good, but it's also doesn't leave a lot of time for rest or reflection or business development or, creativity, a lot of things that I want to be doing and just doing a lot of work. And so ironically, I mean, I guess this is capitalism. It's the same thing, right? I want to get to a place where like I'm doing work or play or whatever that I just really enjoy doing it. And I'm also, getting paid enough. And sometimes I hear people say that, and my Enneagram type is 6. I thought it was 9 coming into New Ventures West, which is the mediator, but now I came to know that I'm the skeptic. And so when I hear other people say things are like really working for them, I'm like, are they? So a lot of it is sort of, having a leap of faith and believing, and then also thinking, okay, well, what can I, adjust about my life? Because sometimes even with self-care, I'm like, oh, not doing enough self-care, and it's like the opposite. It's like punishing me for that. And so I try to flip and just be like, okay, what are, just little things I can do right now that will help and kind of reframe.
So I have a question for you guys. So when even just thinking about the word self-care, like how you think about it or how you define it, because I feel like there's an aspect sort of in our culture where people are like self-care, that's like luxurious bubble baths and spa retreats and like things that are like cost money and or like take lots of time and seem really decadent or whatever. And I think there's a place for that for sure. Like if you can afford it and if you've got the the access to various things, but at this level of thinking of it as just like, how am I taking care of like the being that I am? Like even if you don't have a lot of time, like you talked about food, right, Manji? So like the kinds of food that you're eating or how you're eating them or when you're eating them, like that's a really important part of how you're taking care of yourself. So that, I mean, that becomes a part of self-care. But I totally know what you mean about that sort of like beating yourself up for things too, because I was thinking about things like, oh, like I don't feel like I'm getting enough exercise. I need to exercise more. And then that becomes like this to-do thing, exercise. And for me, it was helpful to kind of look at that and kind of reframe it like movement. Like I just need to move more. And so I can, I have a standing desk. I'm lucky that way. So I can like, sometimes I'm like dancing at my desk or stretching at my desk or whatever it is, just to be like,
Yeah.
I just need to move this body more, whatever that looks like. And it doesn't have to look like, I mean, I've never liked gyms, so I don't need to worry about spending money on gyms, but like yoga classes or like, or, taking an hour, or I need 30 minutes and it has to be cardio or whatever, like, right, Brian? It could just be like,
Oh, it's like, oh yeah,
let's
I need to
all
be
move.
moving.
Yeah. So here we'll have a stretch break.
I also have a standing desk. Sometimes I use and other times not.
Mm,
I think like following with that, like the way I perceive self-care in general, like you guys ever seen like the was it the Maslow's hierarchy, like hierarchy of needs thing? And like I think of self-care as like all of that can come to self-care. Like Devin, what you mentioned, and but like
mm,
I think even those hyper luxurious, trips definitely do encompass self-care. I agree though that realistically, they're not realistic for most. I feel like they're not just not realistic for most people. Like the average person is not gonna be going to like these thousands of dollar spa retreats, getting luxury bubble baths and whatnot. Like I think self-care, to me at least, is following that like the hierarchy of needs. On the basic level, it's just making sure you're alive, making sure that you're not making sure you're not actively decaying constantly. Like just making sure that you're in a spot where okay, I'm not thriving, but I'm not dead. And then I think self care definitely can also evolve higher past that. Once you hit that step of like, okay, well, I don't just want to be not dead. I want to be happy.
Mhm.
And then just doing even those little things, even those little things you mentioned, and with like, be more stand up and move. Um, with what you mentioned, Brian, with I apologize, was it the Pilates boxing class, right?
Yeah, palaxing. Yeah.
Even if it's like doing that, like just anything to make you just a little bit happier, I think can count as like self care. Whether it's you know, standing, dancing around, just having a warm meal at the end of a hard day, being able to just lay down in bed, maybe one day just laying down can be
Mm.
self. I
Or
think
with a pet.
yeah, I think self care definitely encompasses all these different things as long as it like I think like the root of it should just be something that makes you feel a little bit better. Something that makes you feel just that little bit better, just makes you a little bit more satisfied with your life.
mhm. And I mean, I totally agree. And I think like when I sort of started off saying like I think it is about like your nervous system too. So like self-care can be like time with friends. Self-care can be time alone. Like
Mm.
and for the same person, it can be both those things, like depending on how you're feeling in the moment. And like if you can kind of take a little bit of quiet, like just take a breath and be like, how is my body right now? Like, what is the sort of input that I need? Or do I not need input? Do I need, 5 minutes in a dark room just breathing without any stimulation? Or do I need jumping jacks before my next thing? Or do I need 5 deep slow breaths and feeling into my feet? Or do I need to play my musical instrument, or to make a doodle, or a painting or some art? Like, I mean, all these different things come into it, and they are ways of like addressing, like bringing ourselves to a place where like we can activate when we need to activate. So like our nervous systems can do that when they need to, but they can also deactivate when they need to do that. And I think trauma can get us caught in one or the other, or kind of both, but depending on, and not sort of appropriate to the situation. And we need to be able to like, get up and go when we need to be able to get up and go, but we don't want to be getting up and going like when we're trying to go to sleep, right? So I think all of these ways of like taking care of ourselves and our bodies, our hearts, our minds, like all of it, like that's how we thrive as humans, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Self-care is all those little things. I take baths too.
Mm.
Um, but and uh working keeps me away from taking care of myself, but also like just me, my mind. Sometimes I put a lot of pressure on myself, like I can't do this or this, or take a deep breath, or go for a walk unless I finish this assignment, or I can't eat until I do this amount of hours of studying. Um, Maybe my body needs an extra hour of sleep sometimes, but my brain is already on. As soon as I open my eyes, my my brain's on.
Mm.
So I feel like my thoughts stop me from taking care of myself.
Mm. Mm.
Mm. Mhm. And I think what's interesting is when we get in that sort of spiral, it's really hard to get ourselves back to like, and I don't know, like I don't know about for you, but like what I find is like when I'm in that like I don't have time for kind of thing, I get less and less effective and efficient. So it takes longer and longer. And like I'm stewing, and I'm scrolling, and I'm doing kind of all of the things that aren't helpful. And when I do just say like, I need an hour break, or I need a half hour, like whatever it is, like when I do the thing that actually like settles me and grounds me and helps take care of my nervous system, then honestly, like I'm so much better at whatever it is that I'm trying to do. Like I can problem solve better. I can, um, I can go longer if I need to, like all those things. But it, like our minds, I think, just misdirect us so much of the time. That sense like, oh, I can't, like I can't afford that, I don't have time for that, like that's not important right now, I have to do this first. And like, I don't think so. And if you've ever had like a major health crisis, like that's when you realize like, oh, all of that time where I was prioritizing something else, like now it's just all about the body. Like,
Mm.
and it'll show you, it'll show you if you aren't giving it what it needs.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I tend to fall into that pattern too, where I stop. Once I go a day without it, then it goes on and on and on, and then my body will tell me through like an emotional breakdown or crying out of nowhere, and then I'm like, okay, I need to start prioritizing my self-care and my mental health more.
Mm.
How can diet help heal and cope with trauma?
Mm. Well, it's interesting too. Like, I think with food, when we were talking about food before, food's a challenge for me. And I think, there's different things that can fall into self-care, right? Like a carrot could be self-care because it's like super healthy, but like a milkshake could feel like self-care because it's super yummy. And your brain is like craving that dopamine shot for something that's good now. And then there's all these stories of judgment, right? Like, oh, I was bad because I had a milkshake, um or I ate a carrot and I'm like, this is not making me feel any better. Like, oh, you know, and then there's like books you can read. I've had, you know, times where I like did a cleanse, not like a super dramatic one, but one that really, or even just the terminology we use, like detox, like the idea that otherwise what we have in our body is toxic. And I don't know, maybe I'm not the best to answer this question, because I know that there's ways that you can really take care of the body nutritionally, right? And be very mindful about that. But how do you sustain that, right? And is it like a holistic thing? Like if you're doing other things to take care of yourself, maybe that helps. Or if you have, like if you're motivated by a particular exercise routine or martial arts, like Manji was saying, or, you know, or yoga, maybe they go hand in hand. And I've had those experiences. And then I've also had the experiences of like not doing that, and a fair amount of shame bubbling up. It's been interesting because I've had a knee injury, not a terrible one, but terrible enough that like I can't just go running, you know. And that was definitely a solution for a lot of my anxiety and the spinning thoughts and things like that. So, and it motivated me to like eat healthier, ironically, you know, because I was moving more. I'm even like not exactly triggered, but even just the word diet, you know, it's kind of like, because sometimes it means what we're eating, and then other times it means like what we're not eating, right? Or what we should be eating, or what have you. So, but I, you know, I recognize that nutrition makes a difference, and I recognize that hydration makes a difference, and sometimes I think it's the same sort of thing. Like if I can do it or take a little step and feel good about that, that's great. But if I don't, going into a shame spiral doesn't really help either. And so kind of balancing those. What do you guys think?
I definitely agree with that last point of like, you know, it's kind of a balancing act. I like to equate dieting as like fire. The same fire that, you know, warms your house, cooks your food, dries your
Mm.
stuff, is the same fire that can burn your house down, can like cause like horrific injuries. I think of that in the sense that like diets. So okay, to give a little background, I have pretty much always been, you know, on the heavier side. I've always been the bigger kid, my like basically my entire life. Um, until about recently. Um, and I've done all sorts of different exercises, dieting, whatever, right? I've done, you know, I've had moments of not really dieting, just kind of not caring at that point. And I've had moments of the extreme opposite end, you know, extreme opposite end where I was eating probably about anywhere from 1,500 calories or less a day, while probably burning about like 2,300 and above, like
Mm.
crazy level calorie deficits, crazy level of work. Just like I've been around the gambit, from like, you know, doing keto diets to having moments of vegetarianism, not entirely because of a diet, more so because of religion, but still, you know, I've done all these different extreme level diets, and I've found that, in my opinion, diets can genuinely help with like stuff, but they can also be a mass, in my opinion, they can also be a massive source of trauma if pushed too far. Like,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know, um, like it gets to a point where like, you know, like you meant, like Brian was mentioning about like the care is healthy, so that can be something that's like self-care. I agree with that in the sense that, you know, if you aren't eating a lot of healthy foods, you know, sometimes just eating that care will make you feel better, and sometimes
Mm.
you do just need the milkshake because God, you've been suffering for like, you know, a week, just starving yourself. Maybe you just need something, right? I definitely do think though, like there can also be damage done with that with like the concept of dieting in general,
Mm.
of like, you know, you're not at such and such weight, therefore you're not healthy, therefore you're not worth it. It can create those thoughts. I think of like, people that have their diet regime, regiments, and it's just like, so there's those times where like you're following it and it does great. It feels great. You feel better. You're losing weight. Maybe you're not losing weight. Maybe you're, gaining weight, maybe you're underweight and all these other benefits. But then at some point, there's that balancing point and you just go over. And maybe it's like now you're hyper focused. Oh, I need to eat at this specific time of the day and then this specific time, da 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 da. I need to get this exact nutrient. I need this exact nutrient. It's like
Oh,
all
yeah.
this spiral of like, I need to do this, I need to do that. And then the second, the second you mess up at all of a sudden, you know, either you gain trauma because someone says something and it like deeply affects you because you've been working so hard, or maybe, a past trauma kicks in. Like just whatever the case. Like I think, in my opinion, dieting can definitely help cope with trauma if balanced correctly, but I think it can also do like a world of harm if it's allowed to if it's just allowed to spiral out of control.
Oh, I don't even know where to go with this one.
Sorry, I kind of came on a little heavy there.
No. I mean, I think everything that you brought up is so important. And like when I was a teenager, I was a very serious ballet dancer. And I went away to a professional training school in ninth grade and, residential. And the very first day of my very first class, the teacher walked around the room and said a little something to everybody. And she came up to me and she said, "You do know you need to lose weight, right?" Like, what? Like, no, I
Right.
don't. Like, I don't know that. And is that true? Um, I mean, anyway, so like thinking about the ways that, little traumas and big traumas in relation to food and like what, the spirals that set off of, trying to eat less and less. And then like, the eating a pound bag of M&Ms with a friend on the weekend or whatever, because I've been good or because I don't care anymore or whatever it is. Like I'm thinking about the effect on everything of like the psychology of that. And I have a kid right now who's got an eating disorder, like not a sort of standard one, just like a really hard time like eating foods and stuff. And so I I know that food is such an important component of physical and mental well-being. And I know how hard it is for so many of us. And I know how hard like our society makes it when the cheap foods are the crappy foods that are full of toxic, that are full of chemicals and that are full of all the fat and the sugar and everything that is so hard on our bodies. And it's like it's a privilege to be able to eat healthy. Like that's crazy that that's the way it works. And I know there's lots of research about, like how preservatives and ultra high processed foods are so bad for our brains and our like and the way that our bodies function. Yeah, it's such a big topic, and I wish that like people who are really struggling with issues around eating could have access to resources to support them with that. Because there's a lot of people doing a lot of really great work around like functional nutrition, like eating for brain function and body function, heart function, and all the things, mental health. It's such a giant topic, and it is so related in this country, at least to privilege and um and poverty and I mean that, that's a big one. That's a really big one.
What techniques do you use to manage stress or anxiety? Brian, you said you used to run.
Yeah, I mean, physical activity definitely helps, especially like aerobic. It's just something that happens to my body where the kind of stressful thoughts go away for a while because I'm like physically tired. Um, one thing, I mean, this is time specific, but I've been feeling a lot of anxiety about the election, the upcoming election. And I've known from past experience that if I go volunteer, for the candidate I'm supporting, that helps because I like, especially like moving around, like door knocking, sometimes phone calls, sometimes texting, but just like doing something, right? Like even just, and I think that's a lesson in general, like being of service to other people, helping other people really gets me out of my head. And I feel a lot less anxious. I'm sure in part that's probably part of why I'm a coach. It's because I know how helpful, it's been for me and how helpful it can be for other people and being there for them. But then also, I mean, getting coaching myself, getting therapy myself, like, especially being self-employed and an extrovert, I really need like ways to connect with people and, get out of my head because I'm by myself here most of the day. And then actually, we were talking a little bit maybe towards it before, but hang out with my dog. And we used to have a cat too. Even just the like, petting him or sitting next to him, the kind of oxytocin I think is released and that helps you, or, spending quality time with my wife. That's nice. Or she's really into gardening and I'm not as into it, but I've like gotten a little more into trying to help or take weeds out of the garden and stuff like that. And I got really into that. I was just like, let's have some more weeds. Let's have some more vines so I can like take them out. And it was just a different activity than like being at my computer thinking about like all the tasks I have for work. Or the things that sometimes compound my anxiety, like reading the news or um, yeah, stuff like that.
I definitely love all that, like especially with just you mentioned, spending time with your wife and just picking out those weeds and stuff like that. Like I definitely think for myself at least, ways of de-stressing and managing stress. Like everything I can think of definitely connects with like the with you in the sense that all the things that I do are like, I I try to get myself moving the second I start feeling something in some way, shape, or form, whether it be, just all right, my like brain is starting to go in haywire. I just need to do something. I'm gonna get up and I don't know, walk around. Maybe I'm having a particularly stressful day. I go to the gym and I'm just like, okay, I just need to move. I need to move the metal around me. I just need to do something, anything to get myself focused on another activity or focused on something else. And I think like, especially like I'll have moments where I'll go to the gym and maybe I go like I see someone doing something. I'm like, oh, it's not bad, but they could definitely have like they could do it a little better. Let me help them, and then like just helping them with that. I think that also connects with what you mentioned with the coaching. I think all of it connects in a way of like physical activity and some form of connection, some form of like human like face to face human connection definitely helps a lot because you know I'll have moments where I'm stressing out. I'm having the worst possible day and everything's falling down. Everything's crumbling around me. The world's going to end and I can't fix it. The skies are polluted. The water is polluted. The food is not good. Like all these thoughts are just blasting at me at like light speed. and then it'll just be like this. It'll be like a small thing of someone chit chatting with me. Someone stopping to talk to me like, hey man, you come here often, right? Yeah, you're looking real good, or yeah, whatever, right? Just those little communications, or maybe I come over, hang out with my partner, hang out with Jess, and just be like, talking it out, and just that little bit of connection. Maybe we, sit down, watch something. Maybe we're cooking dinner together. I don't know, anything, right? Just these small little moments of connection definitely help. And I think even with what you mentioned, Brian, with like hang out with your dog, hang out with your cat, I think even those things are connection. I don't think the connection has to be with, particularly another person. I think it's just connecting with another being that's going through life, floating on this, speck of dust in the universe alongside us. I think something about that just makes us all feel better.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah, you guys touched on so many great things. And it made me realize or connect to, so I'm working on a workbook right now related to kind of one of the main ways I talk about the coaching I do is that I help people who are feeling stuck unstick themselves. And it can be any kind of stickiness, right? But like the main access points are movement, like we've been talking about, connection, rest, which we haven't really talked about much today, and how important both regular sleep and resting the body in whatever way that, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of rest, actually, not just like being still rest, but whether it's taking a break, but that break could also be like a walk could be restful for you if that's what you need, right?
Mhm.
And then I also talk about like reframing. So it's the storytelling, like the stories that we're telling ourselves about the situation that we're in. And that's also a piece of self-care. And sometimes we need help telling the stories differently. So like to Brian's point of like having a coach and a therapist, if you have that available for you, like it can be so helpful to like help tell the story differently. And then for me, like one of my major tools for recovering from burnout was creative expression and rediscovering that, like, I was only a ballet dancer until I was like 17 before I gave up on that. But I was always into like creative writing and drawing and doodling and things like that. And I kind of lost track of that as an adult, especially after I had kids. And so to bring, some aspect of creativity into our lives and to see ourselves as creative beings, like I think that's so important. Um, and also you were starting to touch on this as well, like appreciation and wonder, like these, like however it is that you feel these things in your lives, like that's another way of managing stress, managing anxiety, like the gratitude list. Like I might sound cheesy or whatever, but just spending a little time thinking about like, okay, everything's shit right now, but what am I grateful for? Like, what is okay? What is good? And it can be so helpful. I find when I'm starting to spiral out again, if I can just get myself to like just 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 things that I'm grateful for, then suddenly I'm in a different mind space and I can deal with things so much better. So I think one of the biggest things that I'm really grateful for around this topic of self-care is like having so many different tools to choose from. And so all the different ways that I've worked on this, and I hear it in you guys too, like you have so many, you have access to all these different things, and just remembering like, okay, I can't run today. What do I do in place of running? Or like, oh, if I don't have time for the work, the workout or the martial arts, like what are the other things? Oh, maybe it's my pet. Oh, maybe it's my wife. Oh, maybe it's my friend. Like maybe it's being alone. Like all these different things. Um, and remembering that it's not just one thing and there's not just one right way. We all have different nervous systems and different needs and different brains and different bodies, and we got to be unique about how we address our challenges too. And compassion. Did I say compassion? Because I was thinking about like compassion for ourselves, because that's
For
a big
sure.
one. Like I've been working on so much lately, is being like having more compassion for myself, because I am mean. I am I'm not mean to other people. I am mean to myself. So like just being like, okay, yeah, this is the reality. It's hard right now. It's okay. Like you got this. You'll get past this. Compassion.
You're on mute, Desiree. but I saw you nodding on that one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was on mute. How do you guys recognize when you guys need a break for your mental health?
Unfortunately, one of the things I do, and my aunt told me my grandfather used to do this. He died when my mom was 13, but it doesn't always happen. But one thing I'll do is I'll just like go and go and go and do something, go and go, and then sort of like collapse, like hit the wall, or uh, just or get sick, you know. I often get sick on vacation because my body's like, oh, okay, you can slow down a little bit now, and then all the germs just like take over. So this is me being honest, because as a coach, I want to be impressive and say, oh no, I very strategically like take breaks when I need to. Oh, look at the kitty. Amazing sweater, yeah.
That is amazing.
Tube top sort of thing. Um, but in terms of otherwise noticing when I need a break, like when I'm being a little more mindful, there's a lot of different things. There's cues. There are some like physical cues, both in terms of sensations, emotions in my body, but then also like there's a lot of foods that make me sort of bloated. And when I'm, working too much or doing too much, I'm rushing with my eating more. And so just kind of, being like, oh, okay, I need a little bit of a reset, which means I need a little bit of time. In a previous job, my last job before I launched on my own, it was very stressful. And my boss, who's the CEO, was also challenging. And what I would do is just go outside. We were fortunate to have a backyard. And I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I need a break. Sometimes it would be 30 seconds. Other times, hopefully, it would be more like 5 or 10 minutes. But the physical things like tension in my neck or holding my breath. And these are all cues that I've learned that I have from traumatizing experiences when I was younger. And one of the books we read in New Ventures West, I can't remember what it's called, but it was basically, maybe it was focusing in clinical practice or something else. It was basically a therapist who was writing, and they said that people like essentially have tics. Like there's physical things they do when they're anxious about something. And they're all different. Some people tap their feet, some people pull out their hair or pick scabs. Or I have this one client who, when he starts to get a little bit emotional, he'll just start doing this. He like rubs his eyes, and I'm like, okay, I'm onto something here. Let me tread lightly and see like what we're exploring. So I try to be conscious of some of my own things that are indicating, I mean, not necessarily that I'm anxious or that I need a break, but that I'm anxious, and I can be mindful of that. And if that's happening a lot, I probably do need a break. How about you guys?
I definitely relate with what you mentioned of the sort of working yourself to the bone and just slowly burning down. I think of it kind of like the way I operate realistically is kind of like if someone lit a stick of dynamite and it's just the fuse just keeps burning and burning and burning and burning. And sometimes I notice it and I'm stopping it. And then other times I know that I need a break long after it blows up in my hand.
Mm.
As for like I'm slowly learning the small things of my head will like physically start hurting, almost like I'm having like a mini headache. Like it'll feel like someone is pushing pretty hard on my temples. I'll feel like the back of my neck will get hot, and I'll just start doing like this a lot. I start like start rubbing my head and my face because I'm getting overly stressed out, and I think my body's just producing a lot of heat. I'll notice that like all of a sudden I'll have a hard time. It'll be like I'm having a hard time breathing. I'm like, it'll be almost as if like I can't, nothing I do gets me enough air. So I just have to try to really pull as much air into my body as possible and just give myself a moment. And yeah, I would say like those are like the small ways I'm starting to learn how to notice my stress. But even then, like yeah, admittedly, I have not always been the best in the past, and I'll know that I need a break the moment I've gone too far, and
Mm.
all I'm left with is a crater around me, and I'm just like, I need a break, and I just pull myself out of the situation then.
Hmm.
Mm. Mm. Um, I actually feel like I've gotten pretty good. Well, let's see. I guess there's kind of like the macro and the micro, like on a kind of daily basis. I feel like I've
Mm.
gotten pretty good at this. Like I have a regular rest practice, like a lying down meditation practice called Yoga Nidra that I do a lot of days. And so I have like and I can feel like when my body's reaching that level of tired where it's just like I just need a half hour, and then I will, then I can get up and do the rest of my day. And I can feel like I feel like when I'm on the edge of getting sick, and instead of like in the olden days, be on the edge of getting sick and I would keep going until I got sick. But now like I can feel it enough and I can manage my schedule enough that, and nobody's expecting me in an office, 9 to 7 or whatever.
Mhm.
So I can rest more like right then. And so I've barely gotten sick. Like I'll be on the edge of it and then I'll take care of it. So I don't actually get like the kind of really long lasting colds that I used to get in particular. Like I would get colds that lasted like 3 weeks where I'd be like, coughing and, gross. Um, so on that level, that's where I was like, oh, I feel pretty good about that. But then when I think about like how, again, over this summer, like I reached a level of anxiety, where I was like panicking and a different kind of burnout than I'd had before, more of like like a really anxious kind of feeling. And I didn't, I guess I didn't see that coming well enough, like I wasn't able to avert it. Like I really spent practically a month in bed because I tried medication and the medication made me sick. And then,
Mm.
you know, I had to keep adapting that. So it's not always obvious, it's like, it's hard. And I'm so grateful that I have a support system to help me when I do max out or when I do burn out or when I am super stressed. Um, I guess like one thing I could just mention, like a little bit lately, I've been trying this practice where you set a 25-minute timer and then you take a 2-minute break and you set a 25-minute timer, take a 2-minute break. It's called the Pomodoro technique.
Yeah.
Doesn't work super well for me because I do have ADHD and like I don't want to break when it tells me to because I'm resistant to the like being told what to do. And then if I get really into the thing that I'm doing, I can't stop. So it'll be like, 3 hours later before I'm like, oh, I should stand up. Um, but when I do that for a little bit, like I find it really is very interesting to learn about how time passes and then also to like manage my energy by like actually having a 2-minute break every 25
Mm.
minutes.
Mm.
So I think for some people that's a great technique to manage a workday if you have sort of a desk job. But again, it depends so much on like your neurotype and what works for you.
Mm.
Yeah, for me, I notice I need a break when I'm a little more irritable, um, a little more emotional than usual, or I'll overreact to a situation that didn't warrant that
Mm,
reaction at all.
Mhm.
But then I also have people around me that'll tell me like, well, especially my sister, if I'm a little mean to her or give her a little more attitude than usual, she's like, nah, you have to fix that or you need a break or something.
mm,
Um, and it's as simple as that, like just one comment from someone, and then I'll look, take a break, and then I'm like, yeah, let's let's fix what's going on right now.
mm.
Um, oh, we're getting
That's
close to
great
time.
noticing.
Huh?
That's great noticing, like that it's just one thing, and then you're like, oh, okay. Because that does, yeah, that doesn't happen with a lot.
Oh,
I
yeah,
saw it
it's
sometimes.
taken a long time.
Yeah.
But we're getting close to time. I'm gonna ask one more final question. What is one key takeaway you hope the listeners will remember from this episode?
Hmm.
I think for me, one key takeaway that I would hope for them to take away, I would have done it, is self-care takes many forms. Like we mentioned, and especially when you broke it down, self-care can be just having rest, which can be in all sorts of forms.
Mm.
Self-care is having compassion for yourself, not beating yourself up over, over too many things. Self-care is recognizing when, when you're at your limit and accept, being okay with comforting yourself at that limit. Self-care, it can come in all these tiny little forms. I think that is such a big takeaway that, it's okay to take care of yourself. It's a good thing to take care of yourself. And yeah, just all these different things. I don't know.
Totally. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm hearing it like the thread of, kind of self-compassion or like imperfection. Like imperfection is good. Mistakes are good. Like you don't have to do everything perfectly. You don't have to control everything. And these are messages I'm often trying to tell myself. Because I think there's a lot in the culture, and it works for a lot of people around like achievement is what's important, and like working really hard and striving for your dreams and, going for it and all of that stuff, which I'm not against that for sure. But there's a lot of people, this is a little bit of a tangent, but there's a lot of people who, like, I don't really believe in laziness. I believe that if people, it seems like somebody's lazy or whatever, there's something underneath, right? There's some sort of mental, physical, emotional experience that's sort of helping to prevent them from doing the thing they want to do. Not like good laziness, like, oh, I want to hang out on the beach and it's great and that's what I want to do. But, like the sort of negative vibe we have around it. And I think with, with self-care, with nutrition, with all of these things, it's a process and it's sort of different every day. And if you really want to have like a clear discipline and that works for you, and you have a community around it, right? Let's say you're on a team or something that works for everybody, great. But if you don't feel very disciplined, or you like, are really hard on yourself because you're like, I need to do this, and this. No, just do that. Just do just one thing and then appreciate yourself for doing it, easier said than done, but I think you can sort of get into that habit. I know, I've definitely made some strides myself, and I try to have my clients do that, because that mean voice, I think a lot of us have that. I don't know if everyone does, but I think most people do. And that to me is really intergenerational trauma, right? Like it's passed down. Like we're, to some degree, we're in the age of compassion in terms of just discourse, right? Like I feel like in the past it was more like, um, well, maybe this is an overgeneralization, but there's more like, this is what you do and this is what you have to do. And there wasn't a lot of flexibility there. And I'm very grateful for the flexibility sometimes it can be confusing, but I'm grateful for it. So I think the takeaway is you don't need to be perfect from my end. How about you, Anne?
Mm. Wow, I think you all covered a lot of it. I think maybe kind of bringing in a final new concept at the end. So that was occurring to me is I have a teacher who talks about an act of self-devotion every day. And there's something about the word devotion that just takes care really to the next level. To me, like devotion is love and care and attention and I think that folds in the self-compassion that we've been talking about. It's like just this, like just being more gentle with ourselves. And I guess maybe that would be really my invitation as a takeaway. Is just be more gentle, be more kind to yourself. Like think about how gentle and kind you probably are to many other people in your life, and can you turn more of that on yourself and be kind and loving and compassionate and forgiving and caring. And if all of us could do that, the world would be a better place.
For me, I would say, well, word balance. Listen to your body and your mind. Um, just make sure that you're balancing appropriately, not too extreme. Like sometimes we're either all in or nothing at all.
Mm.
But yeah, just balance.